The hallway smelled like bleach and thyme. Everything here did, the walls, the sheets, even the air that hummed through the vents. Dr. Elias Ward walked slowly, the soles of his shoes whispering against the tile. He wasn't supposed to be on duty anymore. Not at his age, not in this ward. But some places don't let you go just because you've signed the papers. Some ghosts still have rounds to finish. He passed the nurse's station empty now, except for a single cup of coffee left untouched. The clock above it read 3:15 a.m., the hour when hospitals begin to forget that daylight exists. Inside room 9, a monitor beeped with the fragile rhythm of survival. He paused, listening. It was steady, not dying, not healing, just existing. The sound he'd lived his whole life by. He used to find comfort in it. Now, it only reminded him of what he couldn't save. On the wall across from him hung a framed photograph, Staff of St. Augustine's Rehabilitation Wing, 1989. He was there, center left, his eyes still alive with purpose. Next to him stood a young woman, smiling faintly, her ID badge turned backward. Dr. Maren Holt, the one no one mentioned anymore, the one whose name he still heard in his sleep. He moved closer to the photo, fingers trembling as they brushed the glass. Dust clung to it like ash. For a moment, the corridor felt smaller, the air thinner, as if the building itself remembered. Maybe it did. He turned the corner and entered room 12, the palliative suite, the one no one wanted. The fluorescent light flickered once, twice, then settled into a dull buzz. He reached for the chart at the foot of the bed. The name there made his throat tighten. Patient. Holt. Maren ID 44127. It couldn't be. He looked again. The paper was old, yellowed at the edges, but the ink, her name, was unmistakable. He felt his pulse rise, his body reacting before his mind could. He had watched her die 34 years ago. He remembered the sterile smell, the frantic compression of ribs beneath his palms, the final flatline that no one could call back. He had buried that night in silence. But now, in this ward where the dying came to wait for peace, her name had returned, printed neatly on a fresh chart, as if she had checked back in. A sound rose behind him, soft, mechanical. He turned. The monitor at the bedside was alive, pulsing faintly, its line beating in rhythm. He hadn't noticed it before. The bed itself was empty. He stepped closer. The sheet was smooth, untouched except for one faint indentation on the pillow, as if someone had just been lying there. The monitor beeped again, then stopped. And in that instant of silence, Dr. Ward heard her voice for the first time in 3 decades. Not from memory, not from guilt, from the room itself. Whispering, "You never told them the truth, Elias." The voice dissolved into the hum of the air system. Dr. Elias Ward stood frozen, his hand still hovering above the chart, his breath caught halfway between disbelief and confession. The rational part of his mind, the part trained to identify hallucinations, oxygen deprivation, the tricks of sleeplessness, began to speak, but another part, older and quieter, told him not to move. Not to break the silence that had finally learned to speak back. He stepped away from the bed. The monitor light blinked once more, then died completely, leaving the room bathed in sterile gray. He reached for the switch on the wall, but the lights flickered instead of obeying, as if the electricity itself hesitated. He whispered her name. Marin. The word felt foreign in his mouth. He hadn't spoken it aloud in 30 years. Not once. Not even at her memorial. He'd stood there, surrounded by white coats and flowers, and said nothing. The one man who knew she hadn't just died of a mistake. He had. The guilt was a weight he'd worn so long it had become part of his posture, a bend in his spine, a tremor in his hands. And now, in this hollow ward where walls carried whispers, it was finally answering back. He stumbled into the hallway, his reflection fractured in the glass panels that lined the corridor. His face looked older than he remembered, a patchwork of fatigue and denial. The air vents above his faintly, carrying what sounded like breathing. He followed it, down the hall, past the therapy room that smelled of alcohol and antiseptic, toward the isolation wing sealed off since the flood years ago. A faint light pulsed beneath the door marked East Wing, closed. He shouldn't go there. He went anyway. The door resisted at first, swollen from humidity, but opened with a sigh that echoed like an exhale. The smell hit him: dust, mold, and something faintly metallic. Inside, the light came from a flickering ceiling panel, barely illuminating the shapes of abandoned wheelchairs and old hospital beds stacked against the walls. And then that sound again. Soft, rhythmic, familiar. Beep, beep, beep. He followed it deeper into the corridor until it stopped suddenly, replaced by a whisper that crawled out of the vents. You left me awake. He froze. His knees buckled slightly, a tremor running through him. He wanted to run, to dismiss it as auditory memory, an echo of monitors from other rooms. But then he heard it again, closer, through the wall. You left before I stopped breathing. He slammed his fist against the wall, as if to silence it, but the wall gave a hollow thud, like there was space behind it. He pressed his ear to the plaster. Nothing. Then a single, slow heartbeat. Real. From inside, his hand slid down the surface, feeling the vibration steady, deliberate. The pulse of something buried alive in the infrastructure of the building. Elias whispered, "This isn't real." But even as he said it, he felt warmth seeping through the wall, faint but certain, the warmth of life. He stepped back, chest tight, head pounding. The hallway blurred, his vision swimming with the dim yellow light and the hum of air through ducts that seemed to speak in tones of pain. And then, above the electric hum, came a voice, not hers this time, but his own, replayed through the vents, cracked and trembling, the way he had sounded on that night decades ago. "I'm sorry, Marin. I didn't mean to." He clamped his hands over his ears, but the voice grew louder, echoing from every direction, as if the walls themselves had recorded his guilt. The vents groaned, exhaling bursts of air that carried whispers, fragments, questions. And between them, just for a moment, he heard something else, a human breath. Behind him, he turned. At the end of the hall stood a figure in a pale blue gown, half shrouded in shadow. Her head tilted slightly, her hair hung damp across her face, and though the light flickered, he saw her lips move no sound, only the shape of a word. "Why?" The corridor flickered again, as if the light was trying to breathe. "Doctor." Elias Ward took a hesitant step forward, his chest tight with a mixture of terror and recognition. The figure didn't move, she only watched, her shape trembling with each strobe of the failing bulb above her. Her hospital gown, paper thin and faded, clung to her shoulders. Her bare feet left no sound on the tile. "Why?" she mouthed again. "This time," he answered. "I didn't know. I thought you were gone." The words barely escaped his throat. He wasn't sure if he spoke them aloud or if the building had done it for him. The woman didn't move closer. She just tilted her head, the way Marin always did when she was studying a difficult case, curious, patient, endlessly human. For a moment, he forgot that she wasn't really there. For a moment, he wanted to believe she was. Then the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the corridor. The only sound was his own breathing, sharp and uneven. He reached for his phone, but the screen stayed black. He called out her name again and his voice disappeared into the dark like it had been absorbed. He turned back the way he came, one hand on the wall for balance. The plaster was damp, slick. His fingers brushed against something carved into it, lines, letters, dozens of them. He struck a match. The flame wavered, revealing the words etched deep into the wall. "Do no harm," over and over again. His own handwriting. The match burned down, searing his fingers. He dropped it, heart hammering, and the sound of it hitting the tile echoed like a heartbeat. He stumbled backward into a room. It was one of the therapy bays, long abandoned, the walls lined with cracked mirrors and peeling paint. In the reflection closest to him, his face was distorted, but behind it, another reflection flickered. Her, standing right beside him. He turned, nothing. But in the mirror, she was still there. Her lips were moving again, and this time the words were clear. "You left me alone." He gripped the edge of the sink, his knuckles widening. "I didn't leave you. I stayed until he stopped." Because he remembered now, he had left, not because she was gone, but because he couldn't watch anymore. The monitors had begun to flatline, but she wasn't gone yet. She was still breathing faintly, still conscious enough to know that he had walked out. He'd told himself it was mercy. He'd told the board it was an accident, but the truth was cowardice. In the mirror, her reflection stepped closer. The glass began to fog over, even though the room was cold. Letters appeared in the condensation, written from the other side. "You can still fix it." He backed away, shaking his head. "No, no, you're gone," but the reflection didn't fade. Her face softened, eyes filled with something almost human again, sadness, maybe, or pity. The mirrors began to hum. The sound came from behind them, the soft, steady rhythm of monitors, growing louder, multiplying. Room by room, the sound spread down the hall. Monitors that hadn't worked in years began to glow faintly, one by one, filling the darkness with flickering light. Elias stumbled into the hallway again. Every room on the east wing was awake. Heart monitors, infusion pumps, ventilators, all of them alive, singing in mechanical harmony. The air thickened with static, the lights blinking in sync with the rhythm. And beneath it all, a voice, her voice soft, layered, everywhere. "You can still fix it, Elias." But not alone. He turned, scanning the hall, his pulse thundering in his ears. The vents exhaled a thin fog that drifted across the floor, curling around his feet like breath. He whispered, "What do you want from me?" The lights pulsed once more, then steadied, calm, constant. And from deep within the fog came a whisper, not of accusation, but of invitation. Come back to where it started. He knew exactly what she meant. The operating room, the one they'd sealed after her death. The West Wing was silent. No hum of lights, no distant chatter from the nurse's station, only the slow rhythm of his heartbeat in his ears. Dr. Elias Ward hadn't walked this part of the hospital in decades. It had been sealed after the investigation, her investigation. He remembered the sound of the tape being stretched across the doors, the way the hallway lights dimmed afterward as if ashamed. Now, that same hallway stood open. The door to the operating room hung slightly ajar, a slice of pale light cutting across the floor like a scar. The plaque beside the entrance still read, "Or 3, a trauma theater." His name was etched beneath it. Chief Surgeon, Dr. Elias Ward. He hesitated before entering, fingertips tracing the cold metal of the handle. The air that escaped the room was stale, dry. It carried the faint scent of iodine and memory. Inside, the room looked exactly as it had that night. Tables gleamed beneath a single overhead light. A tray of instruments set neatly arranged, untouched, like relics from a ritual. The shadows clung to the corners as if afraid of what the light might reveal. He stepped inside. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded too deliberate. For a moment, all he heard was the steady hum of the overhead lamp. Then faintly, from the far side of the room came the rhythmic pulse of a heart monitor. Beep, beep, beep. There was a bed there now, not an operating table, but a patient bed. Someone lay under the sheet, perfectly still. The monitor's glow lit the side of the bed in a dim blue shimmer. Elias approached slowly. The clipboard at the foot of the bed had no name, no chart, only one phrase written across it in small, steady handwriting. "You can still fix it." His throat tightened. The air felt heavy, dense with a quiet expectation. He reached for the sheet. His hands trembled. As he peeled it back, the first thing he saw was the hand, delicate, pale, familiar. The engagement ring still on her finger. It was her, Marin. Her eyes were closed, her skin waxen but not lifeless. Her chest rose faintly once, then again. He stumbled backward, knocking over a tray, the instruments clattering against the tile like falling glass. He whispered her name, but the room swallowed it. The heart monitor quickened, its rhythm erratic, almost angry. He pressed a hand to his forehead, trying to find logic in madness. This was impossible. She had been gone for decades. He'd attended her funeral. He'd carried the guilt like a scar. The lights flickered again. When they steadied, she was sitting up. Her eyes were open, clouded, unblinking, but somehow aware. Her lips parted, and though no sound came out, he could hear her voice clearly, echoing in his mind like it was spoken from inside his skull. "You watched me die once. Don't do it again." He stumbled forward. "Marin, I don't know how to fix this." Her gaze didn't waver. The corners of her mouth twitched, not a smile, but something close to it. "You do. You just forgot how to try." He sank into the nearest chair, trembling, his breath coming in shallow bursts. The edges of the room seemed to blur, the air shimmering as if submerged in water. She reached out a hand, pale, trembling, but real. He could see her pulse in her wrist, faint and steady. He hesitated only a moment before taking it. The instant their hands met, a jolt shot through him, not pain, but memory. He was there again, the night of her accident. The lights blinding, the sound of alarms, her voice calling his name as he pressed against her chest, begging her to stay. The blood pooling on the floor, the smell of burnt flesh from the defibrillator pads, and then the voice that had said, "Call it." He never did. He'd left instead. Now, the room began to shake. The instruments rattled on the tray. The overhead light flickered, glowing white hot. Her voice filled the space, layered and broken. "You left me in between." "You left me where silence doesn't end." He tried to pull away, but her grip tightened, unnaturally strong. Her eyes blazed with a light that wasn't entirely human. Around them, the walls pulsed faintly, the rhythm of a giant, unseen heart. The hospital was alive, feeding on their unfinished story. He gasped, "What do you want from me?" Her voice came softer now, like a lullaby through static. "Not forgiveness. Continuation." The light above them shattered. Everything went black. When the emergency lights flickered on, the bed was empty. Her body was gone, but on the wall, drawn in streaks of blood and dust, were 5 words. "She never left this place." The emergency lights hummed overhead, painting the room in slow pulses of red and white. Dr. Elias Ward sat on the cold tile, staring at the words on the wall. The longer he looked, the more they seemed to breathe. "She never left this place." The sentence shimmered, like blood trying to dry but never allowed to. He pressed the heel of his hand to his forehead. His pulse was wild. His lungs burned. He whispered, "This isn't real," but his voice cracked halfway through, because it was. It felt more real than anything in years. He rose slowly, scanning the room again. The bed was stripped bare. The chart was gone. Only the metallic scent of blood lingered, faint, metallic, eternal. He turned toward the back corner. The cabinets there had been sealed since the investigation, locked under hospital order. A small padlock still hung there, rusted shut. He hesitated for only a second before breaking it open with a scalpel handle. The door creaked, releasing a cloud of dust and the scent of time gone stale. Inside, boxes, old, water damaged. He brushed one clean enough to read the label. Hold, Marin, do not discard. His knees almost gave out. He pulled the box free and set it on the floor. Inside were her belongings: a stethoscope, a ring, a stack of patient notes bound by a red rubber band. And beneath those a cassette tape, labeled in her handwriting. For Elias, he stared at it, his throat closing. He hadn't seen his name written by her hand in 34 years. He turned it over once, twice, afraid to touch it wrong as if it might disintegrate under guilt. There was an old player on the counter, half buried in dust. He wiped it clean, slid the tape in and pressed play. A hiss of static filled the room. Then her voice, soft, clear, alive. Elias, if you're hearing this, then I'm already gone. Or maybe not, I don't know anymore. The lines blur here. The beeping never stops. You told me once that sound is proof of life, but sometimes sound is just the body remembering how to die. He gripped the edge of the counter. His breath came shallow, uneven. They said it was a mistake, that the dosage was mine, that I wasn't careful. But I saw your face, Elias. I saw what you carried. You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. He stumbled backward, hitting the table behind him. The tape continued, her voice growing fainter, as though it came from a long corridor rather than a cassette. Maybe you thought you were saving me, but I wasn't asking for mercy. I was asking for time. He slammed his hand down on the stop button, but the tape didn't stop. The reel spun on, whispering in her voice even after his hand left it. You can still fix it. Come back to where the heart remembers. The words looped over and over until the sound warped into a mechanical heartbeat, syncing perfectly with the throb in his temples. He ripped the tape out, but it was still playing. From the speakers, from the vents, from the floor. He fell to his knees, covering his ears, but her voice seeped through, soft now, almost tender. You left me in between. He looked up, and the box was gone. The cabinet stood empty again, like it had never been opened. Only the tape remained cracked and blood-stained. He stumbled out of the room, desperate for air. The hallway had changed. The lights were dimmer, the walls narrower. The hospital no longer followed the architecture he knew. The signs pointed in directions that shouldn't exist. He turned one corner, then another until he saw something impossible. Room 3A, where he'd just been, stood ahead of him again. Only now, the door was open. Inside, a faint golden light flickered, and the sound of a woman humming floated through the air, the same melody Marin used to hum when she charted late at night. He moved toward it slowly. The walls seemed to breathe with each of his steps. When he reached the door, the humming stopped. On the bed where her body had been, sat his own chart. Patient, Ward, Elias ID 44127, the same number as hers. He felt his stomach twist. His name, her ID, the same. And just as he reached for the paper, a voice, gentle, close, unmistakable, spoke right behind his ear. It wasn't just me, Elias. You were dying too. The words hung in the air like smoke. You were dying too. Dr. Elias Ward turned sharply, but no one was behind him. Only the open hallway, long and empty, lined with doors that now all bore his name. Room after room. Ward, Elias. Different ages, different patient IDs. He stumbled backward, his pulse hammering. Each door flickered faintly, the plaques glowing in rhythm. Beep, beep, beep. The same heartbeat as the monitors, the same cadence as his guilt. He pressed his hand to his chest. The rhythm beneath his ribs faltered for a moment, as if trying to match the pattern echoing down the corridor. He whispered, "No, no, this isn't how it ends." But even as he said it, he wasn't sure what end meant anymore. The hospital felt alive now. The vents exhaled warm air, thick and human. The ceiling lights pulsed like veins. The floor beneath his shoes seemed to throb faintly, like the skin of something vast and breathing. He turned toward the light coming from the far end of the hall. It wasn't fluorescent anymore, it was golden, gentle, almost alive. For the first time in decades, he felt warmth instead of fear. He followed it. The deeper he went, the more the walls shifted, peeling paint smoothing out, the smell of disinfectant replaced by something softer. He passed by rooms that looked newer, brighter, and in one of them, through the small window in the door, he saw himself. Younger, hands steady, eyes alive, performing surgery the same night, the same patient, her. He froze, watching the ghost of his younger self lean over Marin's body. The monitor screamed its warning. His reflection didn't hesitate, it called time of death. He'd rewritten the memory for years to protect himself, but here it was unaltered, merciless. He had stopped. She hadn't. His younger self turned toward him, meeting his gaze through the glass. The expression was unreadable, not shock, not fear, recognition, acceptance. Then, without warning, the monitor inside the room began to pulse again. The younger Elias looked down, confused, as Marin's body inhaled once faintly. Alive, her hand twitched, and then he left. He'd walked out. She'd opened her eyes seconds later, alone. The glass between them shattered inward, the sound deafening. He stumbled through the shards, hands trembling, reaching for her, but the room was already dissolving, melting into static and golden haze. And through that haze, her voice returned, close now, whispering by his ear, both kind and cruel. "Now you remember what silence costs." He fell to his knees, gasping. The tile beneath him shifted, softening like the surface of a heartbeat. The sound of monitors rose again, hundreds of them merging into one endless tone, neither life nor death. He looked up and saw her standing at the end of the hall. Marin. Her skin glowed faintly in the half-light, her hospital gown fluttering as if caught in an invisible current. "You said I could fix it," he whispered. "Tell me how." She stepped closer, her face both warm and distant. "You can't save me, Elias. You can only save what's left of you." He shook his head. "What's left of me died with you," Her eyes softened. No, what died was the part that believed in mercy. The lights around them dimmed again. The hallway contracted, the walls narrowing until they were almost touching his shoulders. The air was thick now, humming with a single, steady pulse. Maren reached out her hand. Her touch brushed against his chest, not skin to skin, but soul to soul. He felt the rhythm under his ribs sync with the walls, with the lights, with her. Beep, 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 and then beep, 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 beep. The rhythm quickened. The sound filled every inch of the hospital. She whispered, "You still have one patient left." He looked at her, confused. "Who?" She leaned close, her breath cold against his ear. "You," and with that, she let go. The heartbeat stopped. The hall fell silent, but instead of darkness, light flooded in golden, impossibly warm. It spilled through the cracks of the ceiling, seeping into the walls like sunlight finding its way into a forgotten church. Elias looked down. His body was still there, slumped against the tile, still breathing. Barely. He was the patient now. And the hospital, the thing that had remembered him all these years, was calling him back, one final time, to finish the work he'd abandoned. The PA system crackled to life for the first time in decades. Through the static came a voice, calm and familiar, Maren's voice. "Dr. Ward, please return to R3A. The patient is ready." The loudspeaker faded into silence. Only the echo of the words remained, twisting through the hall like the tail end of a prayer. "Doctor." "Ward, please return to R3A. The patient is ready." Dr. Elias Ward stood motionless. The air around him felt alive, vibrating softly, like it was waiting for his answer. He didn't remember walking, but suddenly he was moving, his body guiding him toward the operating wing. The walls pulsed faintly with each step, the same soft, steady rhythm that had followed him through every lifetime of regret. The corridor narrowed, light shifting from cold white to warm amber. The hum of machinery filled the space, but not with menace. It sounded almost like breath. The hospital wasn't hunting him anymore. It was inviting him home. When he reached the door of R3A, it was already open. Inside, everything was as it had been the night she died. The tray of instruments arranged with impossible precision, the monitor glowing faintly, the smell of antiseptic cutting through the air. Only one thing had changed. There were two beds now. One was empty. The other was waiting. He stepped closer. His name was written neatly on the chart at the foot of the bed. Patient. Ward. Elias status. Critical. He stared at it, a half-smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. A surgeon facing his own procedure, poetic, almost cruel. He whispered to the room, "You always did have a sense of irony, Maren." And then he heard it, the faintest sound, the rustle of fabric. She was there. Standing across from him, the same calm presence he remembered from their long nights on call. Her eyes held him steady, not angry, not ghostly, simply present. She gestured toward the bed. "Lie down, Elias." He hesitated. "I don't know if I can." Her voice was soft. "You've done it for everyone else. Just once, let someone save you." He took a slow breath, exhaled, and climbed onto the bed. The leather straps felt cold against his wrists. He didn't resist. Mara moved quietly around the table, her hand steady, the way he remembered. She adjusted the monitor beep, beep, beep and set a tray beside him. Scalpel, sutures, 4-line, defibrillator pads. He watched her in silence, the surreal tenderness of it almost unbearable. Is this real? He asked. She smiled faintly. Real enough. He wanted to tell her so many things, how sorry he was, how every life he'd saved afterward had been an apology whispered into a void. But before he could speak, she reached out and placed her fingers against his lips. Shh, she said. This is the part where you listen. The monitor steadied. The rhythm matched his pulse. Beep, beep, beep. Her hand moved to his chest, over his heart. The warmth of her palm spread through him, not physical warmth, but something deeper. It was forgiveness disguised as touch. He whispered, "Are you going to take it away?" Her expression softened. "No, I'm going to give it back." She picked up the scalpel, her movements graceful, reverent. The blade glinted once in the light. He didn't flinch. The first incision wasn't pain, it was release. He exhaled sharply, his body trembling not from fear but from the sudden weightlessness that followed. He could feel the air rush through him, like the world was finally breathing with him. Through the haze, he saw her lean closer. Her lips almost touched his ear. "Do you remember what you told me the night before it happened?" He nodded faintly. "That I was afraid to lose you," she smiled. "You never did. You just forgot where to look." The light above them began to change, fading from white to soft gold, then to something beyond color, like warmth made visible. The monitor slowed, each beep stretching into eternity. Beep, beep. Her voice came again, quieter, barely a whisper. "It's all right now, Elias. You can rest." He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came. Instead, something else, a faint hum, low and constant, began to rise from the walls. It was the sound of every heart he'd ever kept alive, every patient, every breath, every apology that had never reached the surface. The hospital itself was singing. Tears slipped down his face. His body felt light, fading. Her hand remained on his chest, steady, guiding. "What happens now?" he managed. She smiled, her voice both in his ears and everywhere at once. "Now, we close the wound." She pressed her palm flat against his heart. The light around them bloomed, pure and endless. For a moment, he felt everything, every mistake, every mercy, every life. Then, nothing at all. The monitor let out one final, steady tone. Beep, peep. And just before the light swallowed him whole, he heard her whisper one last thing. "Do no harm, even to yourself." The light faded slowly, like dawn refusing to wake too soon. The hum of the hospital softened, losing its rhythm one layer at a time, the monitors quieting, the air growing still. When it ended, it wasn't death, it was silence. A silence that didn't hurt anymore. Dr. Elias Ward's body lay on the operating table, eyes closed, face peaceful for the first time in decades. The golden glow receded into the walls, swallowed by the same architecture that had kept his guilt alive all these years. The machines were still, but the faintest tremor of warmth lingered in the air like the echo of a heartbeat after the last beat. The clock on the far wall ticked once and stopped. No alarms, no code blues, only stillness. And yet, the hospital didn't feel empty. It felt listening. Down the corridor, a janitor entered the wing, the first living person to step inside or 3A in over 30 years. He froze when he saw the open door, the faint golden residue along the tiles. At first, he thought it was sunrise, but when he looked up, the lights were still off. He found Elias there, motionless, one hand resting across his chest. The monitors were unplugged, the chart was missing, and on the tray beside him, a single folded note rested under a stethoscope. The handwriting was shaky, but unmistakably his. To those who stay behind, heal what you can, forgive what you can't. Silence is an absence. Sometimes it's mercy. The janitor stood still, unsure what to do. When he reached for the note, a faint breeze moved through the room, though there were no windows open. He turned, startled, but no one was there. Only the faint sound of a heartbeat echoing in the vent, slow, steady, fading. He looked down again. The note was gone. The bed was empty, and the stethoscope was cold. He backed away, whispering to himself, "What the hell?" But before he left, he noticed something on the wall. A faint outline had appeared where the golden light had touched. At first, it looked like stains, but then, as the sun finally broke through the window, he saw it clearly. Two figures, side by side, a man and a woman, drawn in light, their hands nearly touching, their shadows caught in the wall like a photograph burned into memory. The janitor rubbed his eyes. When he looked again, the image was gone. Only the faintest trace of gold dust remained. He exhaled, then turned off the overhead lights. For a moment, he stood in the doorway, staring into the stillness, and whispered the only thing that felt right. "Rest now, Doc." He closed the door behind him. The sound echoed down the hall like the end of a heartbeat. Weeks later, a new name appeared on the board outside R3A, Ward Rehabilitation Wing, dedicated to Dr. Elias Ward, 1939-2025. The wing reopened quietly. No press, no ceremony. Only a new generation of nurses and residents passing through its halls, unaware of the ghost that once walked them in silence. But sometimes, late at night, the machines hum a little louder. A monitor flickers for no reason. A heart rhythm blips across a blank screen. And in the space between two heartbeats, a faint voice seems to murmur, not in pain, but in peace. Do no harm. And somewhere deeper in the walls, faint but eternal, another voice answers, not anymore. Fade to black. The sound of one last heartbeat, then silence.